John, I have never been better to be on the air with you here in Indianapolis, a place where so many of my dreams have come true.
The Ride with JMV on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Hey, what's up? I'm really excited. Back at the legendary Slippery Noodle downtown this afternoon, and it is a glorious afternoon to come down here and hit us up with our friends from Zinc and Bud Light. It's a Bud Light Blue Friday, and I've got your chance at multi-pair of Browns Colts tickets coming up on Sunday for that Week 7 matchup with the Browns. So my advice is, whatever you're doing right now, let's face it, by now on a Friday, you guys are probably either already out the door, but have one foot out the door the way that it is. So go ahead and continue, and instead of just going straight home and doing what you normally do, join us down here at the Slippery Noodle. Enjoy the fantastic food. Get yourself an ice cold Bud Light with me. We'll drink them together as we normally do, and we'll see if you can get a chance at winning some tickets coming up for Sunday's game against the Browns, which we'll talk about the grind of expectation that this is going to be. Go over some situations, both good and bad, and honestly, give you a chance to have a little fun coming this weekend as well, courtesy of Bud Light and Zinc. Bud Light Blue Friday is here downtown at the legendary Slippery Noodle. So we would love to see you here. We do have a loaded show, per usual, on a Friday. I'll get to a lot of the stuff we're going to talk about in a second, but I did want to make sure you're up to date on the latest regarding this Week 7 game with Cleveland. Shane Steichen earlier today ruled out right tackle Braden Smith. He has a hip and a wrist injury. And if you were watching this past Sunday in Jacksonville, Kylan Granson went into concussion protocol. And I was actually talking to Tony Katz on his show a little bit earlier about this, and there's been one player with the Colts that had gone into concussion protocol and then been cleared to play in that week, the next week in this case, and that was Mo Alley Cox last week. Kylan Granson, still in concussion protocol, has been ruled out. Now, on the bright side of things, I guess we'll see what happens in terms of Alec Pierce. It's funny. I look back on that Saturday game, and Alec Pierce looked like the guy that you thought, wow, he's not going to be back for a long time. Made some strides this week. They will make a decision. According to Shane Steichen, there is still a chance, and I think the quote was, look good at practice today, according to the head coach. So we'll find out about Alec Pierce a little bit closer to game time, maybe even tomorrow, something like that. But certainly that is a necessary piece to all this. Now, on the other side, you look at the Cleveland Browns, and they got that upset win over San Francisco last week, and they were led by P.J. Walker, the backup quarterback, because Deshaun Watson did not play. It was interesting earlier this week, Deshaun Watson did not practice on Wednesday. And then everybody thought with surprise, well, wait a minute, we thought he was going to be back on Wednesday. He was not, but he did practice on Thursday. When asked about it, he said, I don't know if I'm going to be back this weekend. I don't know if it's going to be the weekend after that, 2 weeks after that. He did not say whether or not he was going to return for Sunday. And there's a lot of conventional wisdom which would dictate maybe they end up setting him, because you look at this matchup in this case with the Colts and you're going, this is a game maybe we can get past, kind of grind it out with our defense a little bit and then make sure that he is healthy and as good to go as possible coming back from this as we move forward. Certainly get knee-deep into the AFC North, which is going to be a knockdown drag-out for real. Anyway, that is the latest regarding both teams today, and certainly we will talk about that. Nate Atkins of the Star is going to join us in the 4 o'clock hour. We'll talk about some of these situations regarding the injuries, certainly the quarterback situation. You look at the matchup with the Cleveland Browns and the Colts coming off that game where Jacksonville just tore them up defensively. More times than often tore them up defensively. And you saw the quarterback. You saw Gardner Minshew as a guy that we were talking about this time last week, with all the expectations that he could get it done, all the expectations that everything was going to be okay. And the fact of the matter was, if that wasn't his worst game of all time, it had to be at the top of the list. I wouldn't think he would have any games any worse than 3 interceptions and 1 fumble, but it was awful. It was terrible, and among all the things that went haywire, whether you want to blame the coaching and all that, the defense, among the things that went haywire, the biggest portion of that was that of the quarterback. And the giveaways when they were driving, driving in Jacksonville's territory, it was just pretty awful, which a lot of people, as we've talked about already, would suggest, all right, so you've got this Cleveland team that basically won on defense last week. You have this Cleveland team. Thank you very much, my man. I appreciate that. This Cleveland team that last week started P.J. Walker, and in their game so far this year, they have given up just a little over 1,000 yards total in their games defensively. And then you watched a Colts team that just struggled to move the ball. And I know what you're saying. Well, they had some pass plays here and pass plays there, but it was wildly inconsistent. Jacksonville's defense isn't that great. It was the same Jacksonville defense that they played, if you remember, the first time out, and the Colts were just a mess. A mess in a game, and as we know now after last night, a mess in a game that was so necessary to hang into this, so necessary as you look to the future with this team. I mean, it was really necessary for them to win that game to keep up that competitive situation at the top of the AFC South. And I know what you're saying. You're saying, hey, the South isn't any good. I mean, all you have to do is win here and win there. And while, maybe further along that might be the case, right now we've seen Jacksonville. What have they won? Like 3 consecutive in the last, 13 or so days? And I thought I know it was New Orleans, but it was New Orleans on the road. It was I checked that. It was Jacksonville with a banged-up quarterback against New Orleans on the road, who basically got the heads up to play before game time last night on a short week on a Thursday night. And I don't care what anybody says, that was an impressive win. And offensively, there wasn't a great deal of consistency. There was big play capabilities, and we saw that again from Christian Kirk, but it wasn't, by most standards, just the ultimate in offensive consistency. But when you have a scheduling situation like that, and then especially, and you've seen this before, when you have a dinged-up quarterback, when you come away with that win, that makes it altogether more sweet. And now you got all this time off to get right, to feel better, to get more healthy. I mean, that was huge for Jacksonville last night, just like it was huge for Jacksonville that Sunday prior at home against the Colts. Now, we've talked about this. In terms of Anthony Richardson, we know the situation. And as I've mentioned, and this is just kind of selfishly me putting this in here, I would much rather this Colts team give us a smidge more than here or there of competition, of being competitive within this division on their schedule the rest of the way, because I don't want to have to start talking about the what ifs, and what if he's not this, or what, he showed us this, but he can't stay healthy. As I've mentioned before, I'm not ready to have that conversation in October during a season. That's a conversation you go end of January, February, basically until you get to the end of training camp, because that is going to be a long haul of things that we just cannot answer. People bring this up all the time to me, and it's rightly so. I mean, you should ask me. I mean, I'm out, and I'm at Kroger searching right through the shelves in the refrigerated section. I'm looking for the Winschuler spreadable cheese, and I'm wondering, did somebody hide it and tuck it away by a lot of these, behind a lot of these lesser brands of spreadable cheese? And unfortunately, it wasn't there. But I get asked all the time. So, hey, what do you think is going to be the reality of this in the future for Anthony Richardson? And like I mentioned, this is October of a season where they're still playing. And we know all this to be true. It's the AFC South. They have, at least on paper, a schedule in which it would appear, unless their quarterback does what he does last week, unless they look like they did last week, that would appear that you can remain competitive. And I didn't want to start talking about that just yet. But when asked, my simple answer is you are not going to know until at least right now. As I had my hands elbow deep into the refrigerated section, as of sitting here at the legendary Slippery Noodle, and it may even be past that. I mean, hell, it may be after Halloween of next year, maybe into November, because not only you're going to have to see this return to believe it, but you are going to have to see a consistency out on the field to believe it. That's what needs to take place. That's what needs to happen. So I wish I had that answer. And, if you ask my opinion, I've got to take a wait and see on it because he's not been durable enough to get past really anything. And that's where it stands. See, I'm telling you, that's the type of conversation you don't want to get into right now. You don't want to have that conversation before Halloween. You don't want it in November or December. You want to be able to maintain the, hey, look at Gardner Minshew getting back to not making mistakes, to be a managing quarterback or a game-managing quarterback. People always say, that's such a backhanded compliment. Crap. It is not a backhanded compliment. If you watched how it looked so mismanaged last week in that loss, that would be enough to tell you that that is nothing but a 2 thumbs up grade A compliment. Now, he's a game manager. He normally doesn't turn it over. He normally doesn't put himself in those situations. He normally doesn't make bad decisions. He makes good decisions. I'd love to be called that. You would love to be called that. Whatever sport is your sport, whatever it was, you would love to be called that. Nothing wrong with it. And unfortunately, what we had talked about regarding Gardner Minshew leading up to Jacksonville last week was not at all what he ended up being. And as we know, again, with the 3 interceptions and the fumble, the 4 turnovers overall, this team is not even in the neighborhood to be close enough to be able to handle that. See, when you lift that up, though, look what happens. See, that's why I say I think you got to keep a little shadow on that. James and I are adjusting. If you're watching via YouTube Live right now, we are adjusting it. So we got bright light. The window is behind us right here. There's Gritty. Happy birthday to Gritty. Happy birthday, Gritty. By the way, Gritty's outside the Win Schuler Spreadable Cheeses Lounge right now and with us at the legendary Slippery Noodle. But if you're watching via YouTube Live right now, you see the window, so there's brightness coming in. And what that does is that kind of darkens everything in here unless I keep it at an angle, which I know I apologize, WeGrowHairIndy.com, because my hair looks fantastic. It was Haircut City today, and you can tell that it's flowing and looking great. But when I sit up here like this with the angle, it kind of gets cut off a little bit. My bad. My bad, Darren Andrews, for that. But we are here, and we are good to go with the ice-cold Bud Light. Good to see you and your chance at winning Colts-Browns tickets and a lot of conversation to have. So as an end result of what I started talking about is just try to keep our interest here. Don't let us go someplace else where we don't want to go. We got plenty of time to talk about it in the offseason. I mean, really, it's kind of like this wide receiver stuff that I've been hell-bent on talking about over the years. It is better set to talk about that in the offseason. Got plenty of time to do it, and Anthony Richardson and his status will directly fall in to that category. But, man, we got a lot to get to today. I saw all of our predictions go up via the various platforms of social media, and I think everybody but Brendan King went with the Browns. Now, I will say this. Normally, that's pretty good for you guys. Normally, that's pretty good. Although, I will say, you go back to week number 1, I think we all mostly pegged Jacksonville in week 1, and we were pretty right about that. But at the same time, normally when we all go one direction or the other, that is good for the opposite. That is good for the ones that we didn't go with. But it's funny, you look at all these scores, and all these scores looks like it's straight out of the 1970s. You guys remember watching the NFL in the 1970s? When they scored 21 points, that was an absolute offensive blowout. Now, obviously, the better teams, Miami with Bob Greasy, Roger Staubach in Dallas, Terry Bradshaw and the Steelers, they would put up, so there were some teams out there that put up numbers. But since I was a Bears fan back then, and I watched everything from, Bears-Packers, Bears-Lions, Bears-Vikings, normally it kind of felt like that. Bears-Buccaneers, normally it kind of felt like that. And that looks like that type of game. Hey, Colts fans, you know this. It felt like that all the time, right? From basically 84 until the early stages of the 90s and past that. Felt like, all right, I'm going to roll out the place kicker here. I mean, and that was a good thing, too. When Dean Biasucci came out there, you guys got excited because you would rather have seen Dean Biasucci out there than Ron Stark out there. I mean, there's a reason why Ron Stark was all-pro guy all the time. He got a hell of a lot of practice to do it out there. Hell of a lot of reps to do it. But that's kind of the game that we have an expectation for coming up on Sunday. It truly is. We can talk about that if you like at 239-1070. Email address is jmv@1075thefan.com. We are inside the lounge via YouTube Live. It's brought to you by Win Schuler's Spreadable Cheeses, where our very own Gritty is celebrating a birthday. She's here right now, but if you're inside the Win Schuler Spreadable Cheeses lounge, you can wish her a happy birthday. And as I mentioned, we have a loaded show because not just the Colts this weekend, there is a crap ton going on. Basketball-wise, you have Hoosier hysteria in Bloomington. You have a lot of Hoosier fans upset because Boogie Fland, I don't keep track of this stuff at all. Now, I will say, I would keep track of it if it were in-state and a high school player that I know. But out-of-state high school players, I'm sorry, I'm just not going to put any focus on that whatsoever. Boogie Fland is supposed to be one of the better players of this coming class of next year out there, and he was down to Kentucky, Indiana, and Alabama, and there was a lot of back and forth going that IU had a legitimate chance, and then ultimately the selection was Kentucky and John Calipari. So, if you keep track of that, you're bummed out. Now, if you're an IU fan, you got Hoosier hysteria coming up later on tonight down in Bloomington. Hoosier hysteria, I'm assuming, will be wildly more popular than IU's homecoming game versus Rutgers tomorrow. I'm assuming that. But Hoosier hysteria later on tonight. You got the musical selections of Gucci Mane down in Bloomington. And our friend Don Fischer is going to join us coming up in the 5 o'clock hour. Probably not so much because I know he doesn't dive into that recruiting stuff either. But probably a lot of IU football matchup with the Rutgers, where they are right now. Tom Allen's back on the path of not naming a quarterback, and everybody's going to guess. And at this point, it really doesn't matter too much now, does it? But we'll talk to Don about that coming up in the 5 o'clock hour today. Remember, the Pacers play the Cavaliers. That final preseason game is here at the Fieldhouse later on tonight. And because of that, we've got to bail out of here. We've got Colts Happy Hour hosted by me that begins at 5:30 today. So 5:30 until 6:30 for Colts Happy Hour. And I'll be there with you for that here at the Slippery Noodle. But the final preseason game for the Pacers is coming up tonight. It is funny. I think this was somewhere, and I apologize, I don't know where it's from. But I saw a podcast with Miles Turner, and really, this is how I know that I've won. This is how I know that I've won. If this were a year ago, and if Miles Turner would have came out and said he believes he's a top 5 center in the NBA, I would have been absolutely loaded with everybody's bullcrap. Hey, there's your guy. I mean, even guys that cover the team now say, hey, there's your guy. No, he's not my guy. I've just had, more than anybody else around here, a deeply rooted belief in how positively he affects this team and this group. And the dude works at it, and he likes to be here. And everybody always pisses and moans, why don't you want to come here? This is Indy. Well, I mean, oftentimes you look in the past, you can understand why somebody wouldn't want to come here, because a lot of you act like jackasses. And I know that's everywhere, but you need to you need to be a little bit better around here. I love it and you love it, but this is not quite, for your average NBA player, a destination location. You want to be feeling comfortable. You want to be embraced, and you don't want to have to deal with jackassery. So that's part I understood. So it's not really like he's my guy. I've just had confidence in his ability, especially with this team and those around him. And honestly, I've had more confidence than anybody else out there. I've had more confidence in the past than his own organization. And I feel like I've won. Because if he would have said a year ago, 2 years ago, I think I'm a top 5 center in the NBA, I would have been inundated with everybody out there telling me that I'm stupid and there's your guy and he doesn't know anything and he's soft and he likes Legos and he likes to dress and whatever. But one dude, and it's one dude that I know, and we kind of go back and forth all the time. So that's how I know that I've won. And honestly, you're looking at it as a top 5 center, I would say the same thing. Even if why would you say anything else? Like, people are on Jim Irsay for saying that, this quarterback is the future. What the hell are you going to say? Well, wait a minute. You're going to be like me and go, well, I'm going to have to wait a minute because this guy, every time he hits the field, gets injured? Hell no, he's not going to say that. Now, granted, he oftentimes says way too much, and we get on him for that, but that's not it. He has to come to the aid, to the defense, and have the back of the guy that they drafted 4th overall and is supposed to be their future. If you're Miles, you're in defense of your own back. Hell, I don't even know who all the centers are, to be honest. I mean, it's such positionless basketball right now. I don't even know if you'd call him a center. I don't know. Everybody's a power forward. Everybody's this and that. Doesn't seem like that they're the same 1 through 5s as once upon a time we all thought and how it was coached up. But that in mind, if I were him, I would have said the same thing. Would have said the same thing. Why would you not? I would think as a Pacer fan, you would want that, as opposed to saying, I don't know. Well, maybe Porzingis is better. Maybe this guy's better. No, that's what you want. That's what you should want. Come back with that. A little college sports conversation, too. Some MLB we'll dive into a little bit later on. And we have a busy schedule tonight. Not everybody is playing to start the postseason, but a lot of teams are in the state of Indiana. Bob Lovell of Indiana Sports Talk joins us coming up next. We'll talk about those in action in the first Friday night of the postseason in high school football. Bob's going to join us coming up next. Nate Atkins of the Star, 4 o'clock hour. Zac Jackson of the Athletic covers the Browns at 4:30, and voice of the Hoosiers, Don Fischer, is coming up at 5. The Slippery Noodle on a Bud Light Blue Friday. I would love to see you down here, and I would love to see you win tickets to the game on Sunday. I'll tell you what, if you win tickets to the game on Sunday, I will also send your ass to the Bullseye Event Center to have the best pregame party ever. I'll do that, too. If that sweetens the pot for you, come on down. I'll do that for you as well. That's the Colts VIP tailgate, presented by Hayes & Sons Restoration. Devin's the on-site engineer. James back of the studio. The Win Schuler Spreadable Cheeses Lounge. YouTube Live, the stream, the app. It is HD Radio and 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
If you're struggling with opioids, you are not alone. Help is available, and you can take practical steps to recover your life. The New Vista Outpatient Recovery Center at Valley Vista Hospital is here to help today, starting with a no-cost assessment. Their opioid treatment program includes a medical evaluation, withdrawal management, introduction to community support programs, individual and group therapy, and discharge planning. Care is provided by licensed medical professionals. With a culture of healing and community, the New Vista Outpatient Recovery Center at Valley Vista Hospital is a place where individuals can feel empowered to seek their highest potential. No matter where you are, no matter who you are, no one is alone in recovery. You can recover and lead a meaningful life. The New Vista Outpatient Recovery Center at Valley Vista Hospital can help. Valley
JMV.
Let me have a Diablo sandwich, a Dr. Pepper. Make it fast. I'm in a damn hurry.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Welcome back. We're at the Slippery Noodle on a Bud Light Blue Friday. Man, I would love to see you guys here. I've got Browns Colts tickets to give away. Yeah, I told you too, man. We'll get you in the Bullseye Event Center too if you come down here, join us, and be a part of this. Love to see you here. My man Matt's right in front of me right now. We need everybody down here on this Friday and getting involved in this giveaway we have. Bud Light Blue Friday at the Slippery Noodle. Great spot. 239-1070 is that number. Email address is jmv1075thefan.com. Busy show, so we'll get to our friend Bob Lovell of Indiana Sports Talk. Every Friday is brought to you by our 14 Central Indiana Joe Childers Run CarX locations. That is CarX.com for all of your car, truck, or van needs today. It's Bob Lovell on the opening Friday of the second season, the postseason, the playoffs in high school football around the state of Indiana. Hello, Bob. How are you?
I'm great, John. How are you?
I know it is still an incredible night, but it is always – I hate the fact that there can't be everybody going –
right
at the beginning here. I understand why, but that's the one thing, because it gets you looking ahead a little bit the next week, doesn't it? Just a little bit, a smidge.
Yeah, I think you always have to keep in mind that these succeeding Fridays are going to be really difficult times for families. I mean, you're talking about if you have a son who plays football, unlike you and others, you can go out and go play basketball with your buddies, and you're going to be able to do that for a while. You should probably stop, but you've done it for a while, so you're going to have those opportunities. Well, I don't think you and your buddies are going to strap on your pads and go knock each other around and go play football in your spare time. And so,
yes, we are not.
Your career comes to a screeching halt. And so all those dinners with your teammates, all those practices, all those things that you and the family, summer, all the things that you've done, they're over. For a number of people, they're over tonight at the end of the night. And that is an incredibly difficult thing to deal with. It's hard. All those years that you've invested in it, they come to a screeching halt when the tournament rolls around.
All right, what are we looking at tonight, especially in 4A? 4A is business as usual, and it is loaded with interesting first-night matchups.
Well, sectional 13, let's start there. Plainfield, my beloved Quakers.
You got it.
Harrison and West Lafayette. That is I'll tell you what, that is a tremendous matchup. I mean, these are two teams that are pretty good, to be honest. Plainfield's number 4. Plainfield's not. They're not number 4. Plainfield is in a situation where they're both ranked right around the same in the polls. And the other part of it, too, is that Quakers are struggling. They've lost their last 2. Harrison is really, really good. So I think this is one of those toss-up type of games. Also in that sectional, Decatur Central is at McCutcheon. And so I think when we did the pairing show, Paul Condor and I looked at this as kind of a wide-open thing. Decatur Central playing very well right now. But that's going to be a tough matchup for my Quakers tonight.
Yeah, I mean, you look at it like that. Obviously, Roncalli starts out, it's been an end of the regular season that's been rough for a young team, certainly on the south side. They start out with Shortridge later on tonight.
Right. Well, you're right. It's been a tough time. You have a situation in sectional 14. You got Whiteland and at Terre Haute North. Franklin is at Terre Haute South. I'm obviously concerned about that myself, but it's Roncalli, as we've mentioned, has had a difficult time lately.
Yeah.
But now's that time where you start to put those things together. They have such great, they had a tremendous year a year ago, and they play well in tournament situations. And so I'd be optimistic, quite frankly, if I were a Roncalli fan.
Yeah, I mean, 4A's got everybody going, and I guess everybody's trying to track down East Central again this year, right?
Well, yeah, I think it may be difficult. They open up with Shelbyville, and I'm not exactly sure when you begin to look at 4A. You've got teams maybe some teams from up north. I think the intriguing game in 4A, though, John, is Greenfield Central hosting Pendleton Heights. This is number 4 and number 12. Our friend Matt Surface's son plays for Pendleton Heights. They've been having a good year. How about the weekend Matt and his family are having? So he has 2 sons. One plays tonight in the sectionals. One plays tomorrow at Terre Haute as the Sycamores are in action tomorrow afternoon. And so, but the Greenfield Central Pendleton Heights game is a really good one. I think people have to pay an awful lot of attention to Kokomo. They played great. Further north, New Prairie's having a tremendous year. New Haven, Mississinawa, Northridge, some teams you have to think about in 4A.
So Bob Lovell of Indiana Sports Talk is going to have you covered tonight and tomorrow night regarding all this action, then get you set with a little college football coming up tomorrow as well. He's with us via the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. I was thinking about this. I think I was talking to Greg Rakestraw Tuesday about the basketball that's going on at Greenfield Central right now. It seems like that with whatever group that they have, I mean, this particular line of athletes over at Greenfield Central, both football and basketball, they've got a pretty good spot, kind of a sweet spot it looks on both sides right now, basketball and football especially.
I think you're right. I mean, they're in a cycle of a really talented group of kids. And I think a lot of times your basketball team feeds off what your football team does. I think it happens in a lot of schools. I think they have tremendous athletes. Their coaches are outstanding. They all realize they're on a run. They have the pieces in place to be successful playing football and basketball. Tonight, though, again, it's a tough matchup with Pendleton Heights.
So Bob Lovell, brought to you by your 14 Central Indiana CarX locations with me every single Friday. CarX.com for that location nearest you. So certainly there have been better teams in New Pal, but still a strong 7-2 as they hit now the postseason. They match up with 1-8 Newcastle. Is this, maybe a type of New Pal team that is not as vaunted as it has been in the past entering the postseason, but certainly one to be reckoned with at 7-2 this year?
No, I'd agree with that 100%. I mean, in years past, they've steamrolled people, John. I mean, they really have. They've been the classic juggernaut. They're good. They played a great schedule. Their conference is really solid. 7-2 might be a little deceptive. I think they're better than that. But again, that part of the state, they're in the midst of it. So you look at who they're playing. I think it's Newcastle, as you mentioned, has really had its struggles, to say the least. So I think they have a great chance to just move on. And I wouldn't. You're going to have to play awfully well to beat them in whatever tournament situation you're in when you're playing New Pal.
Hey, Bob, I want to look at 3A too because Chittard has been so good at 9-0. Right. But you look on the other side of the field tonight, it's Tippecanoe Valley. I don't know anything about them. They are 9-0 as well. That seems like one big-time humdinger right there.
Well, Tippy Valley, this is one of those years where they felt like they could be pretty good. They've had this team has gotten better and better. They're ranked number 6 for a reason, as you point out. I think clearly the question you ask is, has Tippecanoe Valley played the schedule that Chittard has played? They probably haven't. Tournament time is when these things sometimes even out. So playing that great schedule that Chittard plays, I think, can give them an edge in this matchup tonight with Tippy Valley.
Man, what do you think about it, too? There are so many good teams in this top 10. You mentioned Chittard and Tippecanoe Valley, both unbeaten. Gibson Southern down south, 7-2. Guerin, 7-2. Peru, 9-0. Heritage Hills, 8-1. Hanover Central, 9-0. Hamilton Heights, 9-0. Tri-West, 8-1. That is a loaded logjam there in the top 10 in 3A.
Some tremendous teams, as you point out. Guerin is playing an undefeated Peru team. Who, as you mentioned, they're number 13, and they're really good. You look at what Hamilton Heights has done. We talked about them last week. They're very, very difficult to score against. Gibson Southern throws the ball all around the yard, so they're difficult to match up with. I think Tri-West. The Tri-West Danville game is a tremendous game. To be quite honest, there's a lot going on, inter-county rivalry, a lot on the line for the obvious reasons, and so I think all up and down 3A, you got nothing but great games.
This is just assumption here, and Bob Lovell joins us in 2A, but I'm assuming that there is a path for both Lafayette Central Catholic and Linton Stockton to reach the championship game in 2A at Lucas Oil Stadium. Now, there are a lot of teams in between them. Triton Central's 8-1, Brownstown Central 8-1, Laville 8-1, Lures, of course, always in the mix at 6-3. Alexandria's 8-1, Bluffton 7-2. Again, you've got another top 7 or 8 right there where it is top heavy with good teams in 2A.
No, John, when we started talking about football, we said that there was great balance in the classes. We thought that Center Grove might have an edge in 6A, thought that Lutheran would clearly have an edge in 1A. But we said 2, 3, 4, and 5 were going to be very, 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 very deep, and they are. I mean, Linton Stockton has some impressive numbers. There's no question that they're good. Triton Central is really, really good. The team that I would pay attention to in 3A is Brownstown Central. Reed May, their Hall of Fame coach, is a tremendous coach, and they know how to play. There's no question that they're good. Modern Day still trying to find their way along, but I think you look at Linton Stockton, Triton Central, Brownstown Central, LaVille up north has a tough matchup tonight with Andrean. Lures is always good, but there's a lot of quality teams in 2A, as you mentioned.
Yep, and Class A as well, which starts with 8-0 in the season. Indianapolis Lutheran, fresh out of the southeast side of Indianapolis. How about 8-1 Springs Valley, number 8? And we thought they only played hoop down in Springs Valley in West Baden, down in French Lick. But they got a little football going this year.
Valley's been winning some football games now. I mean, they really have. I love what Park Tudor has done. You know, they're ranked number 5. They're legit. They're very, very good. They take on Fountain Central tonight. That's a tough game. Fountain Central's number 15. Springs Valley, South Putnam is having a great run. Bud Wright and his guys at Sheridan, John, you always have to pay attention to what they're doing. But I think most people recognize that Lutheran will be a very, very difficult team to beat. They've won it the last 2 times. They're undefeated, and undefeated for a reason.
Bob Lovell of Indiana Sports Talk. He's got you tonight and tomorrow night as the postseason is officially underway. Not with everybody, but officially underway. He's got you covered, brought to you by every Friday. Your 14 Central Indiana Joe Childers run CarX locations. Maintain fall road readiness at CarX.com with that location nearest you today. Have a blast. I know you will tonight and tomorrow night. And we'll be back with it with all classes on board this time next week, Bob. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, John. Have a great weekend.
It is Bob Lovell of Indiana Sport Talk. Nate Atkins at the top of the hour. Kylan Granson did not get through concussion protocol. He's ruled as out. Braden Smith gutted it out last week. He's going to sit it out this week at right tackle. And we'll talk about that and the defense of the Browns. Nate Atkins of the Star, 4 o'clock. Zac Jackson of The Athletic covers the Browns coming up at 4:30. And Don Fischer joins us coming up after 5. A Bud Light Blue Friday with Browns Colts tickets to give away. And we're at a choice location downtown at the Slippery Noodle. Join us at the very least inside the lounge via YouTube Live, brought to you by Win Schuler Spreadable Cheeses. 93.5, 107.5.
JMV.
You just got your asses whipped by a bunch of damn nerds.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Oh, I love this place. I'd love to see you down here, too, on a Bud Light Blue Friday. I call it the Legendary because it is. Last time we were down here, we talked about how the place is haunted this time of year. What a great story. I also referenced this as the home of Marty. Marty is not here yet, but we are on a Bud Light Blue Friday at the Slippery Noodle. We've got tickets to give away. Browns Colts tickets for Sunday. Conversation to be had. Also forthcoming. Pacers' final preseason game is tonight at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. They take on the Cleveland Cavaliers for real next Wednesday, and their matchup again at the Fieldhouse against the Washington Wizards. But the final preseason game is tonight. And I know somebody just sent me, of course, you're going to back up 33 saying he's top 5. Now, I'm going to back him up for suggesting to suggest otherwise would disappoint me. Just like if Jim Irsay were to suggest otherwise about the quarterback that they just put all this into with number 4 overall in this past spring's draft right now, I wouldn't want to hear that either. All right? We'll find out whether or not it's going to be true, but what else do you expect anybody to say? You think he's going to say, yeah, I think Porzingis is going to be a lot better than me. I mean, this Walker Kessler guy's coming on. He's going into year number 2, and, yeah, he's fan. Come on now. What would you expect the dude to say? See how the season goes, too. And you're right, Josh just mentioned that Tyrese Halliburton has unlocked a lot of maybe what we hadn't seen consistently in the past, and you're absolutely right about that. MLB's coming at you later on this afternoon and tonight. We've got a Game 5 with the series tied at 2 in the AL, Astros and Rangers. Again in Fort Worth at 5:07. Phillies and Diamondbacks at 8:07 tonight. That best of 7 Game 4. 2-1 Philadelphia as the Diamondbacks try to even that up. Slippery Noodle downtown. More of your thoughts with me, Nate Atkins, on those not participating and that vaunted defense of the Browns coming to town on Sunday. Nate Atkins of the Star coming up on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Don't you love fall in Indy, but you hate the paint? Do what your neighbor Mark did.
Fan.
The Ride with JMV.
If peeing your pants is cool, consider me Miles Davis.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
And some comments regarding Jonathan Taylor via a podcast from Zaire Franklin and EJ Speed. I don't know how deeply we're going to get into that because, again, from what I had heard, it comes under the title of what else are you going to say? All right, you're going to say that it wasn't about business. You're going to all this stuff that we talked about leading up to. I mean, what else are you going to say? We oftentimes make a lot out of nothing, and this may fall into that particular category. It's coming up in just a bit. Zac Jackson of the Athletics going to tell us all about Cleveland, especially on the defensive side of the football. Voice of the Hoosiers, Don Fischer. You got Hoosier hysteria tonight with Gucci Mane, the performance down in Bloomington, and the homecoming action versus Rutgers coming up tomorrow afternoon. I believe that game is underway at noon, which means an 11 a.m. start downstairs on 93 WIBC. Don Fischer joins me coming up at 5. Because of the Pacers-Cleveland game and because of Colts Happy Hour, we are done here. I'm not done. We're going to continue moving forward, but this part of the show was done at 5:30. Then I'm going to host Colts Happy Hour, and then we're going to get you to the Pacer pregame. Final preseason game has Cleveland at Gainbridge Fieldhouse tonight, and we have it for you right here coming up at 7 o'clock. Meantime, via the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline from the Indianapolis Star to get us updated on injuries, who's out, who's in, all that fun stuff and more, Nate Atkins joins us. Hello, Nate. How you doing this afternoon?
Doing well. Another week in the books, and, it's always kind of something with this team. It's amazing to think that, 8 days ago or so, whenever that was, I guess it'd be about 2 weeks ago, we didn't have a Jonathan Taylor contract. Then we have one, and then we have quarterback changes, and it's kind of what I've learned that this beat is a little bit. So another week of a lot of news here and a lot of adjustments.
Yeah, I think in other places they call it oftentimes a cluster blank, Nate, to be honest, is what it is.
Yeah, that's a fair way to describe it. It's kind of crazy because last year was obviously the peak of that. And this year, I thought once that Taylor contract came through, it was, we had the quarterback, had the coach, had the running back under contract, and things would normalize. But, it's a vicious league, and here we are.
It's funny. I know that they have gone with the mantra of for the shoe for a long time now, and I want it to be stop jacking around because you're right. And I know they're not going to put that up on the side of Lucas Oil Stadium, but they should. I think we recognize that this team is going to be back, consistently back, not just with the play and the outcome and the results on the field, but with how things are handled off of it, organizationally, team-wise, and when you don't have all this consistent garbage you have to go through. You don't have an important player getting suspended earlier this week for 6 games like Grover Stewart. When we're clear of that, and we also see the consistent play on a winning level back on the field, I think truly that combination is going to tell us what we need to know that this team is in the right direction and in the right spot.
Yeah, I'm not sure how they'll go for that as the hashtag, stop jacking around, but you can pitch it to them, see how it goes. But,
sure.
I think there'd be some people that would definitely agree with you on that.
Yeah, in terms of Grover Stewart, I mean, it's the last thing anybody needed. But you come off that disappointment in Jacksonville, no matter what side of the football you're talking about. And then, you're set into a week when you anticipate hearing the news that we got regarding Anthony Richardson being done and opting for surgery. And then that thing kind of comes out of nowhere, with the exception of Colts fans. You're kind of used to it. He's going to be missing for 6 games. I'll start right here. This is an A and B question. A, how much will he be missed beginning Sunday against the Browns? And then B, does this at all derail on any level the interest the Colts may have in bringing him back once his contract is finished here? Obviously, at the end of his deal, making him longer term. Does that have any play whatsoever?
Starting with the first one, I do think it's going to be a big loss for Sunday. especially. I think that's the game where it's really going to come to the forefront because, this is a game that's set up to be very defensive. Two teams with potentially backup quarterbacks, or maybe the Browns will have, Deshaun Watson in there sort of gutting it out with that, his own shoulder injury. But it's really set up to kind of what team can avoid the mistakes to win the game. And I think Grover Stewart being out, that kind of gives the Browns a lane to avoid the mistake. I expect them to just sort of run the ball right at the backups there, whether it's Eric Johnson or Taven Bryan. Neither guy has played a lot, certainly at the nose tackle position. Taven's more of a 3 technique. Eric Johnson, they've been molding in there, but he's, we haven't seen a ton of him since he got drafted in the 5th round last year. And the Browns have 2 Pro Bowl guards, and I expect them to just kind of play it simple and go right at that spot. So we'll see if, it's going to put a lot on DeForest Buckner's plate, what there always is. I expect him to be double-teamed every snap. We'll see if he can produce through that, because it's one of those tough things where, like, if you can't stop the run up the middle, there's very little schematic adjustment you can make to that. And so, at least that's not going to expose them with their young outside corner. So I think that'll be an issue. As far as the future of Grover Stewart, the Colts very much believe that this was an honest mistake and that that he'll learn from this. And they love Grover, the person, they always have. But the one tricky thing in this league is whenever you give a lane for someone else at your position to prove what they can do, this is where it's going to be interesting to watch Eric Johnson. He's going to have a long sample size of 6 games, but that's a guy that they drafted to develop, and they wanted to add strength and weight to because he was coming out of Missouri State, but they liked his athleticism, and we'll see if he can play, not obviously Grover's level, but if he can be a serviceable, solid nose tackle, you start to get into that conversation where Grover Stewart's a free agent. He's been averaging about $10 million a year. You've got Eric Johnson, who is on a very, very cheap salary for the next 2 years as a 5th-round pick on a rookie deal. That's where it becomes a conversation. We have to see it first. It's quite possible. Like, Eric Johnson has to prove that. But, yeah, I think that the door is at least open for something to happen there, whereas, prior to this week, I would have said, I thought Grover Stewart was a top extension candidate, and he still might be. It may go the other direction where, you really learn how much they miss him, and they need him that much more because of what they see without him. But at least it's less certain to me that he's going to be extended here than maybe a week ago.
So Nate Atkins of the Star covers the Colts with us on this Friday edition, Bud Light Blue Friday at the Slippery Noodle on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. So was the Gardner Minshew turnover parade last week, the 3 interceptions and the 1 fumble, was that the so-called blip on the radar, or was there more to it, and especially more to it in terms of what we might expect to see from this Colts offense against this vaunted Browns defense Sunday?
I think long-term it is a blip on the radar. Gardner's never had a 3-interception game before. He's really known as a guy who takes care of the ball, even sometimes to a fault. He doesn't really attempt a lot of risky throws, and he's played a lot. He's started like 26 games in this league now. So I think that part was a little bit random. 2 of the interceptions, the ball just sort of fluttered out of his hand, and that can happen when when he's trying to force the ball down the field, and he doesn't have as much arm strength, so there is a risk for that. But his track record doesn't really have a lot of that. I do think, like, the strip sack that he had, he does have a higher fumbling rate than a lot of other quarterbacks. It has to do with, just being sort of a smaller quarterback, the hits, and trying to absorb a hit, trying to get away from those hits. I do think that can be a risk for as long as they're playing without Braden Smith at right tackle. And that's going to obviously be the case this week. They've got Blake Freeland in there for his second start at right tackle. And this week it's a real concern because the Browns are going to have Myles Garrett coming off that edge, Zadarius Smith off the other edge. It's interesting, the Browns have dominated every single defensive stat you could find except for turnovers. They're 30th in the league in turnovers, and I think it's mostly that they force so many 3-and-outs. They aren't on the field enough for that. They also run a lot of man coverage, so they don't really have eyes on the quarterback as much. But this could be a week where if that matchup between Myles Garrett and Blake Freeland goes on paper how it might, this is a week where I could see the Browns sort of rebounding and, correcting some of their turnover mistakes. So I think the Colts are up against it this week in terms of fixing the ball security. But going forward, I don't think Gardner's going to throw the same number of interceptions. It's more the fumbles that you have to watch for.
Yeah. What other than just an awful day for him, what was so compelling? Because, Jacksonville was just doing the same thing mostly we saw in week one. And I know that they took away the short passes, and that looked like that discombobulated everybody here after that initial drive. But what led him down the path of just trying to be and make plays out of something that normally he isn't, or in the fashion in which we've seen him make plays? What led to that?
Yeah, it was, I think, a mix of throwing more than he's ever thrown before, career high 55 attempts. He was sort of forced into holding the ball and waiting to develop down the field. Not normally his style, but the Jaguars are running a lot of press man coverage, and all of a sudden their corners have really kind of taken off, especially Darius Williams in the slot has sort of, just really become a star. He was flashing last night in the Thursday night game against the Saints, and that took away one of the easier outlets for Gardner, which is Josh Downs, the one player I think he has the best chemistry with. So they just kind of took the easy answers away from him. They made the game fall on his shoulders by all the stuff they were doing to take away the run game with the bear front or the diamond front, 7 and 5 guys up front, made him throw out of it, but they made him throw out of it without those easy, completions to Josh Downs and right away. So some of it he was trying to go down the field, and it just was a tough day for him. It just, the ball flew on him twice where he had open guys, Michael Pittman Jr. open. At least on one of those, he was really open, and the ball sailed over his head. And the other one looked like a miscommunication. Josh Downs and Michael Pittman were running really close together. There's no way the play was designed that way. So that might have been on that. And then really the other one, it looks like a desperation play. And I guess it kind of was, the one in the end zone, but that was more of Pittman was breaking free to the outside. And if he could have thrown it the outside, it may have been a touchdown. If he at least could have gotten a jump ball, I'd take Michael Pittman against most players. That was another moment, though, where the kind of lacking arm strength combined with he seemed to be, he was falling backwards on the play. Just an ill-advised moment to try that pass. So just one of those games where he had to throw way more than he ever had. He had to throw down the field more than he's used to. And first start for him, I guess second start since after the Baltimore game, but just kind of too much on his plate at once, and it kind of snowballed on him.
So Nate Atkins of the Stars on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline, he brought up, this team defensively and the Browns up front, and talked about Garrett. We brought up Smith. But how much of a concern should the Colts have, certainly by what you were just talking about and what went down last week, considering what we have seen so far out of that secondary? Clearly, Jim Schwartz has both sides of this defense, both ends, I should say, of this defense, playing exceptionally well right now, and you could make an argument that the best part about it may be in that secondary.
Yeah, no doubt. He was talking this week in his press conference about what's really set them over the top is just how great their coverage is in man coverage on the outsides. They've got 2 first-round cornerbacks in Denzel Ward and Greg Newsome, and they have a slot corner, Martin Emerson, who's a third-round pick, playing like a first-round pick. And they're pretty much able to just put guys on islands and stack the box. And there aren't really good answers to any of this. The best that teams can try and do is make those guys cover and man for longer, but that means surviving Myles Garrett and Zadarius Smith in the pass rush in all the ways that Jim Schwartz has always been one of those creative at generating pressures and mixing it up front where guys are rushing from different leverage points and angles all the time. So it's just a lot to throw at an opposing offense. And what I expect this week is that I think they're going to live with 8 guys in the box, just like Jacksonville did. You'll see Rodney McLeod, who started here last year, one of the better run-fitting strong safeties. He's going to be that extra guy in the box because I think they kind of know. They were talking this week, they're expecting Jonathan Taylor to be more of Jonathan Taylor. He's been inching back there, and that's kind of the best hope the Colts have for explosive plays is if he is that guy again we saw a couple years ago when he was healthy and in shape. So they're going to really stack it to take that away, and I think they're just going to live in press man on the outside, which against some passing games is a scary way to live, but with their corners specifically and against this passing attack and where it's at right now, it's just going to be a tough matchup for the Colts they have to overcome. Alec Pierce is I think he's going to play. He's questionable with the shoulder, but it seems like he's going to play, but he's a little limited. And Kyler Granson's out this week. So the number of targets they have available, especially if they're going to keep a tight end in to help Blake Freeland against Myles Garrett, it's going to make it harder to break guys open. So at some point, these receivers are just going to have to win some of these matchups, and Gardner's going to have to really be on point throwing, obviously more than he was last week, and their communication is going to really have to be on point. So it'll help being at home. It'll help having another week of practice as the starting unit, but definitely it's a matchup that's not in their favor on paper.
Hey, Nate, I was talking about this a little bit earlier this week. Is this one of these games on this schedule here when you look at the matchups, and we saw what Jacksonville did and what they took away on Sunday and how this offense operated for the Colts. Is it one of these situations where, simply put, if the Colts can't find anything on the outside, can't move it down the field, which I don't think a lot of us believe that they ultimately can, are they just screwed considering how the Browns are going to play them on Sunday?
I mean, I think if that's the case, it's going to be really hard to do a lot on offense. But what's in their favor is that, the Browns have their own quarterback issues with Deshaun Watson coming off the shoulder injury, and their offense hasn't really gotten going either. And kind of the formula for the Colts, if they're going to try and win this, is probably very similar to how they beat the Ravens, which is long field goals, and they have Matt Gay kicking at home indoors. That's a nice weapon to have. And then obviously their defense has to make enough plays. That's where I think losing Grover Stewart is pretty significant for this game, because it takes the best thing I think that they did against the Ravens was suffocate the designed runs and kind of make the Ravens win from drop back passing, where they didn't really have threats on the outside to expose them, and they were just able to get them off the field a lot, and force a couple turnovers. That's kind of the model where I think the Colts are going to need turnovers. They're going to need, get into Matt Gay's range, so that means protecting the ball and at least moving it enough to get some long field goals going. Outside of that, I think the one other way would be if Jonathan Taylor just really gets going, but that's going to mean, I think, running on stacked boxes. He did that in 2021, but I think what's tough here is no Braden Smith, and they don't have a blocking tight end like Jack Doyle. That mattered so much back then of clearing out those stacked boxes. So this is where I wrote a lot about this week, but Anthony Richardson, while obviously he was he's a rookie, he's developing as a passer, the run threat for him served as like an extra blocker against those stacked boxes. It would make a defensive end freeze when he handed off the ball, or the defensive end would crash on the running back and Anthony could pull it out and go somewhere else. And that's the element that they need right now to solve this stacked box issue. Without it, I think at some point they're just going to have to throw teams out of it. And it's going to be tough this week against the corners that they're up against. But if they can make enough plays, just get a few first downs and kick some long field goals, maybe their defense can win it like it did against Baltimore. I think that's the best chance they have.
Nate Atkins of the Star covers the Colts. He's on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. We'll take Anthony Richardson out of the equation because clearly he is the most important loss for this team in this game on Sunday and then certainly moving forward. But on the game on Sunday, who would you view as the bigger loss? Braden Smith at right tackle not being able to play, or Grover Stewart with that 6-game suspension not going to be in action?
It's a good question because I just talked up the case for Grover, but I still have to go with Braden just because of the matchup he specifically has with Myles Garrett, who is one of the best game records in the NFL. Probably I'd put him up there with just below Aaron Donald or pretty close, right up there with Nick Bosa. And those are guys that usually you have to just scheme toward and put a lot of attention to and use your tight ends for, and that all helps. But, not having Braden Smith, going back to a right tackle and Blake Freeland, who's going to get his second game there. He's practiced 4 times there since the season started. It just gets tough. They'll do things to help him out. Obviously, they'll have a tight end in there, maybe full time. That's probably the way to do it. But they're also going to move. The Browns will move Miles around. They'll line him up over the center sometimes. They'll stunt. They're going to stress the communication of that line to where you'll have other guys sort of coming at him too. He's gonna have to face Zadarius Smith, when Myles Garrett goes on the other side. And so I think it's just a ton to throw it at a right tackle. If the Colts are able to, find some way to play with the lead and really be the team that can play safe like they did against Baltimore, where they didn't turn the ball over and didn't have to force that much, they can maybe avoid the drop back settings for Blake Freeland against Myles Garrett. But I think every time that they're in sort of like a third and long, third and medium situation, you're going to have to really keep your eye on that matchup because it just feels like the potential for disaster on any play. And that's not just talking about the loss of Braden Smith. That's as much about Myles Garrett and just the heater that he's on right now.
Hey, Nate, really quickly in closing, too, we watched Jacksonville last night get that Thursday night win, and I thought that even against the Saints team that's not very good, was ultra impressive, given the fact it was a game-time decision for Trevor Lawrence. They didn't play great offensively. They made big plays offensively, but I believe 3 wins in like the past 13 days, which included, spending 2 weeks overseas in London. This has been an impressive 4-win consecutive run for this Jaguars team.
Yeah, no doubt. They're 5-2 already. They haven't done that in quite a while. And you take it back to really last season where they started 3-7, and then they finished 9-8, won a playoff game. They've really kind of taken control of the AFC South, and that's kind of what I expected this year. They started a little slow on offense this season, with I think a lot of offensive line issues, but they get Cam Robinson back at left tackle. They let some more chemistry build with Trevor Lawrence. They're just one of those teams that's going to keep getting better and better because of the edge their passing game is going to have on opposing teams when it gets continuity and consistency and just flat out the players that they have with Calvin Ridley joining forces with Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram and all of that. So as long as Trevor Lawrence is healthy, I just think they're a notch above everyone in the South because the only other quarterback who's currently healthy that you could put in the conversation with them in that division would be C.J. Stroud, who's having an amazing rookie year. But the difference there is they don't have the same built-in scheme and the same receivers he's playing with to do it consistently every week, and he's a rookie. So I think the Jaguars are kind of in a nice spot where they can – I don't know if they'll run away with the division, exactly yet, but they're certainly the leaders in the clubhouse, and it's going to be a surprise if anyone can catch them.
Nate Atkins of the Star covers the Colts. Kind enough to join us on this Bud Light Blue Friday live in the Slippery Noodle. And, Nate, have yourself a great weekend, and we'll see you in the press box coming up on Sunday. Thank you.
Yep, have a good one.
Nate Atkins of the Star, the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. So Trevor Lawrence not only led his team last night in passing, and it wasn't great, 20 of 29 for 204 and a touchdown. That was a 90-yarder to Christian Kirk. But he also led his team in rushing with 8 for 59. It was not a spectacular offensive performance, but you combine their 31 they put up, and then Foster Moreau unfortunately could not reel in what was potentially a game-tying touchdown pass situation. Got them that win. They've now won 4 in a row and has gained a little bit of difference within the distance, I should say. Within the difference of others in the AFC South right now. Yeah, we're downtown, Bud Light Blue Friday at the Slippery Noodle. We'll come back with you on the other side. And Zac Jackson, whether or not he believes that Deshaun Watson is going to quarterback coming up on Sunday. I don't think there's been an official announcement made on that unless I've missed it. And P.J. Walker, how he looked starting for Watson this past Sunday in that win over San Fran. Zac Jackson of The Athletic coming up next. 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
with JMV.
Well, you're going to have to say that. You're going to have to speak up because I can't hear you.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Inside the Winshulers Spreadable Cheeses Lounge via YouTube Live. If you want to go there. Great to see Gritty. Happy birthday to Gritty, by the way. From the lounge, who's celebrating today. 93.5, 107.5, The Fan. Of course, you got HD Radio and the stream and the app if you want to go there as well. Nate Atkins of the Star a little bit earlier. Bob Lovell also a little bit earlier. Spiro Ditas joined us from CBS yesterday. Any of the podcasts that you have missed, 107.5, thefan.com. But joining us now from The Athletic, he covers the Cleveland Browns. That's your matchup on Sunday, week number 7 at Lucas Oil Stadium with Cleveland and the Colts. Zac Jackson, he joins us. Hey, Zac, thank you very much this Friday afternoon for the time. How you doing?
Good. I'm all right. I mean, 6 weeks of the Browns is like 6 months or 6 years, but I'm ready to come to Indy tomorrow.
Well, you don't even want to be around here recently. You think that's a long time. So let me tell you about lengthy periods of time around here with this team in recent history, Zac. Yeah, you did a lot of time talking it up. Yes.
It's funny you say that because earlier I was listening to Stephen Holder on Cleveland radio. And he was like, it's been years since the Colts had a quarterback. And I'm thinking, Stephen, I love you, but it's been decades or centuries around here since the Browns had a quarterback. So, I get it.
Yeah, it's obviously always more of a mess if you're actually soaking in that mess, which we have been here for a while. I want to ask you this. Got a couple of local guys on this roster. David Bell from Warren Central being one, and Dawand Jones, your right tackle, a fourth-round pick in this past year's draft out of Ohio State from Ben Davis. Let's start with Dawand Jones. How good has he looked, and just how overall surprising has his level of play been at right tackle?
Well, it's been fairly surprising, and it's been really good. I'm not going to say perfect or exceptional, but it's been really good. And so, the defense has been awesome, but as far as the offense, in terms of positive surprises, he is clearly the one. He's come a long way. They've coached him up. They think he's done everything that he needed to do to become a professional, to get ready, and they think the sky's the limit for this kid, and I kind of think that too. So he's been super impressive. In how he's handled everything, and how he's taken guys on. T.J. Watt in his first start, Nick Bosa last week. Dawand's been really good, and the Browns were willing to do what other teams weren't, including the Colts, which Dawand is well aware of. I think it was 5 picks ahead that they took Blake Freeland. But, yes. They think they got a guy that he might never be perfect, but he's so big that when he gets his hand on you in pass protection, you just don't get around him.
Zac Jackson of The Athletic covers the Browns on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. I know that you got a staple over there at left tackle right now in Willis Jr. Could Dawand Jones, could he play left tackle in the NFL?
They gave him very few reps there in the summer, and they have talked about it, but they think he's best fit at right for now. So, in 2 years when the Browns have to make a change at left tackle, maybe, but yeah. I think that they feel like he's home there, and we'll see.
Makes sense. David Bell's from Warren Central, too, and Purdue at wide receiver. I haven't checked here recently. What type of snap count is he getting game after game thus far?
Not much, but he just had his best game. They don't beat the 49ers without David Bell. And to a Browns fan, that sounds crazy because he's been invisible for a season and a half. But he catches a ball on fourth down to keep a drive alive, and he teamed up with left tackle Jedrick Wills on a block of Fred Warner, who might be the best linebacker in the league on a touchdown run, the only touchdown the Browns scored. So a week ago, I just said, I can't tell you anything positive about David Bell other than he's a nice kid, but he definitely was an impact player in that game last week.
So, Zac, we know this. Nick Chubb went down for the season. Kareem Hunt was brought in. Jerome Ford is also a part of this, rotationally speaking. How has the Browns offense adjusted to that just stratospherically major loss earlier this year?
Yeah, not well is the answer. Now, they obviously have had the quarterback drama and all of that, but they ran it last week. Some of that was just opportunity. Their defense was so good that I think they had 15 more snaps than the Niners had. The weather wasn't great, and they had a practice squad quarterback playing, frankly, so they ran it out of necessity and eventually had some success. The most disappointing thing, other than the drama and just not having Deshaun Watson play at a high level, is that Watson finally played a good game the last time he played, and they didn't get to build on it, let alone in practice, let alone in the games, right? So they need to run the ball. They're going to play more bad weather games, and even if Watson gets back and is playing really well here sometime relatively soon, they're going to need to run it, and they did last week. Jerome, nobody's Nick Chubb, right? Jonathan Taylor, I think, is the closest thing out there. Jerome Ford's a talented guy. They can use him in different spots. He's not a 20, 22, 25 carry a game guy. Kareem Hunt is no longer a top-level running back in this league. But they think they have enough with that combination, and we'll see how they use it. I mean, to me, can they run Watson when he comes back? Because he needs to run around. If he's hesitant at all, or maybe in that shoulder, it's going to be a problem.
Hey, let's talk some quarterback drama, because certainly we're no stranger to that in the past around here. So let's bring this up with you right now, because it's always better feeling when it's happening someplace else. So this is what I gather, and go ahead and correct me on all avenues in which I'm inaccurate. So Wednesday, I think everybody there thought that Deshaun Watson was going to practice, and he didn't. And then you were skeptical if he was going to play. And then Thursday, he was back out there practicing. So if that's true, tell me, and then move this thing forward, your expectation for Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, at the risk of telling you how strange the whole thing has been, I would tell you that yesterday at 4:30, if I was on your show, I would have said Deshaun Watson is not playing. But he practiced in full today. In the 15 minutes or so that we can see, he seemed to be practicing with much more purpose, and like he was getting ready, he was feeling better. And I think that the full expectation is that he's going to be the starter on Sunday. Now, are they worried about soreness? Do they fully think that he's healthy and he can run the whole playbook? I don't know. So, they're going to go through the last-minute checks and balances, in the 50 or so hours that we still got until game time. But when they get on that plane tomorrow, I think they're thinking that he's going to be the quarterback. And I think over the end of the practice week here that they shifted all attention to him being that. So they had the uncertainty before, but I think they at least finished this week, even, yesterday and today, thinking he's going to play.
It's interesting. You guys over in Cleveland have been waiting on Deshaun Watson and paid for so much like him. It was like waiting on a 90s album from Guns N' Roses back in the day. You guys waited for so long for this. What has so far been the payoff, if anything, to this point? What do you believe is the future for him? Are you going to get return on investment there? And then how are the fans reacted so far to Watson being back out there and then not out there this season?
Yeah, there's been angst, and I would tie that to the rest of the answer, which is I think because of what they gave up and because of the situation that they're in, I think the fans just decided he was going to be great, that he needed to be, right? And he does, to live up to the contract. And he hasn't been that. So this is a no excuses league. We all know that. But you could also lay out valid excuses for why you haven't seen the best version. I'm pretty blunt with it. He's played 9 games. He's played 12 good quarters. It has not been good. It has been a distraction. It has been a circus, and it in no way has been worth the investment. However, he did just play his best game. You see a defense that's good enough to carry him to the playoffs if he even shows up on Sundays. And you do see enough glimpses to think that they can eventually piece this together. It has happened only a little over 0 to this point. But he's talented. He's not some rookie. There is a track record of him doing it. And in the last game and with the way Amari Cooper's playing, I'm not shutting the door. It just hasn't happened to this point. And really no one knows exactly the extent of the injury or what has been going on the last 3 weeks except Deshaun and people at the very top of the organization. And so when he comes back in, which we're now assuming is Sunday, he just has to play well, and they have to really grow as an offense over the next month or so.
Zac Jackson of The Athletic covers the Browns with us via the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline. Before I let you go, was last week all about the defense, and then tell me what Jim Schwartz has put together, and I've talked about it on both ends, the front and the back end here, just looks like a team that will choke you out, and it's got playmaking ability, all that the Colts, I'm sure, offensively with Gardner Minshew coming off that performance last week in Jacksonville, do not want to see. How good has this been, and were they the major reason why that this team handed San Fran their first loss of the season last Sunday?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they were fortunate to win the game last week, but it wasn't fluky because the defense was that good. I mean, this is the NFL. Through 5 games, they're giving up 200 yards a game. They are living in opposing backfields, and that's the simplest way to say it. If you don't get blocked, you don't get beat, right? And they're back there. They're all over the place. Denzel Ward is playing like the best corner in the league. Martin Emerson's not far behind him. Myles Garrett's a freak of freaks, and they got guys around him that are, freeing him up and joining him in the backfield. So it hasn't even been crazy stats. When you look in terms of turnover, sacks, and the things that usually get defenses noticed, they're just back there. They speed up the quarterback. They speed up the play caller. They speed up everything. And when they've played crappy offenses, the Titans, Joe Burrow on one leg, Kenny Pickett, they have flat out dominated them. And the Niners were sharp early last week, and when it turned, no exaggeration, Brock Purdy went 2 whole quarters without setting his feet one time. They were not only beating him to the spot, but they were in his head. He was seeing things that weren't there.
Yeah, that's you look at the stats, and the stats you said, the big stats, about just over 1,000 yards so far this season given up, is an amazing one, too. And what you just described regarding what they did to Brock Purdy is an absolute nightmare, considering what we witnessed in that bad game of Gardner Minshew last weekend in Jacksonville. Absolute nightmare. Hey, Zach, man, I appreciate it. Safe travels over here, and we'll catch you up in the press box coming up on Sunday, man. Great info. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Zac Jackson of The Athletic right there. Man, good things to say about Dawand Jones and David Bell, here, local products from Indianapolis. Warren Central and Ben Davis, respectively, and Zac Jackson talking about that defense. Anybody else gather that, too? That made it sound like this defense is going to make a nightmare of the Colts and their offense on Sunday. Anybody else gather that? Quick break, and we'll come back. Slippery Noodle, Bud Light Blue Friday. We've got Browns-Colts tickets to give away. While we're here, we'll take a break, come back, Don Fischer, top of the hour, and a lot more coming at you here. Inside the Lounge via YouTube Live, that's the Win Schuler Spreadable Cheeses Lounge. The stream, the app, HD Radio, 93.5.
Ride with JMV. 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Slippery Noodle, Bud Light, Blue Friday. Tickets to give away. Don't go anywhere. Jim McCann in Southern California writes me this. Nobody will be surprised if the Browns defense dominates the Colts. Most fans will be surprised if the Colts beat the Browns. I love being surprised. And heck, it's Gritty's birthday weekend. It is Gritty's birthday weekend. It'd be a big surprise at this point if there's more than 20 points scored on either side. That would also be a big surprise coming up on Sunday, too. And the mystery or the soap opera that he described in Deshaun Watson, that'll be interesting to see how that works out and whether or not they go with P.J. Walker coming up on Sunday, too. John Buzzard chimes in. I'm starting to have GM envy. If the Colts had John Lynch versus a GM that should have been fired 5 years ago, these injury and suspension hiccups wouldn't be death to the season. 49ers just plug and play. But they did lose in Cleveland last weekend. But no, I mean, seriously, I get exactly, John, what you're talking about right there. Hey, by the way, ALCS, game number 5, tied at 2 games apiece in the best of 7. They go 2-3-2, right? So this is the third game at Texas this afternoon, 5:07. Justin Verlander and Jordan Montgomery, the pitching matchup. And that is just a little over 15 minutes away from getting underway in Fort Worth, Texas this afternoon. Game 5 of the ALCS. Quick when we return, voice of the Hoosiers, Don Fischer. It is a homecoming weekend. Hoosier hysteria tonight. And Stefaket, the voice of the Hoosiers, joins us next.
Hey, it's Kevin Bowen here for my friends at Window Nation. Fall is the best time of year. There's so much to love about the fall, especially the return of Window Nation's best offer of the year. Get 2 windows free for every 2 you buy. Plus, put no money down, make no payments, and pay no interest for 2 years. If your old windows are hard to open and close or drafty and leaky, now is the time to call Window Nation. Take care of it now before the cold weather arrives. You'll be loving the new look and feel of your home. Plus, save up to 30% off your energy bills. You'll also love Window Nation's knowledgeable exterior designers and quick, clean, accurate, professional installation. Not to mention, you'll love the savings of this fantastic offer. Put no money down, make no payments, and pay no interest for 2 full years. And for every 2 windows you buy, you'll get 2 windows free. But this offer will disappear as fast as the leaves on your maple trees. So call Window Nation today, 866-90Nation, or visit windownation.com.
When it's time for a remodel in your home, you want someone that can do an excellent job, someone that keeps you informed every step of the way, and someone you trust. JMV here for Get 'em Associates. They are the home remodeler that Central Indiana has trusted for over 35 years. Get 'em has made thousands of homeowners happy by making sure the job is done right. When it's time to remodel your kitchen or bath, Get 'em Associates. GetEm.com, GetEm.com. Tell them JMV sent you. GETTUM.com. That's GetEm.com today.
Turf professionals know the best time for the very lowest sale price on serious landscaping equipment from Exmark is right now. Midstate Truck Equipment in Fishers has Exmark's full fleet of stand-on aerators and ZTR rentals. Get to Midstate Truck Equipment in Fishers today for low end-of-season blowout pricing on the best a turf guy can get. Exmark. Midstate Truck Equipment in Fishers. 800-540-4479. Midstate Truck Equipment. 800-540-4479.
Hi, it's Bob from Royal Spa. Did you know you can experience the ultimate rejuvenation with our unique hot tubs made right here in Indianapolis? Royal Spa hot tubs are the only hot tubs compatible with Epsom salts. Imagine the tensions melting away as you step into the luxury of a Royal Spa hot tub. And now is a great time to invest in your rejuvenation. We built our inventory back up and now have new models, scratch and dents, and even demos ready for delivery. Experience the difference for yourself. Visit us online at royalspa.com.
Ah, Royal Spa.
The following is presented by the Indiana Standard Bred Breed Development Program. From Harrah's Hoosier Park Racing and Casino, it's time for the hardest race of the day on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
They are up. Country Mama has gone off stride. Moving out for the lead is Peekaboo Lady. Swinging Senorita. There goes Call Me Goo. And Call Me Goo now goes up to take the lead. Racing fourth at the outset is Baby Take a Vow, and then it's Stella Rose with Vintage, and Country Mama now back on stride, but a distant trailer. As they move around the first turn, they pass the quarter in
.75 The Fan.
The Ride with JMV.
Are you kidding?
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
We are at the legendary Slippery Noodle on a Bud Light Blue Friday. You guys, thank you so much for joining us. Got Browns Colts tickets to give away. Remember, we got to bail early because we have Colts happy hour, bottom of the hour, and then the Pacers' final preseason game is here in town tonight. It tips at 7 against the Cleveland Cavaliers, so we're 30 short on this particular afternoon. Now, Harris-Hoosier Park race of the day, and we do have a winner for that. It was Steve. The horse was Call Me Goo, paid $2.60 on a $2 bet. $2 exacta was $10, and the 50-cent trifecta, $5.30. Your Harris-Hoosier Park race of the day, 50-50 in betting and dining to Steve. We do that Tuesday through Friday every single week, and racing going on at Harris-Hoosier Park Racing and Casino in Anderson now through the first couple of weeks of December. Got Game 5 going on with Texas and Houston in the AL just about set to get underway. That is Verlander versus Montgomery with the Phils and the Diamondbacks in game number 4 from Phoenix coming up later on tonight. Meantime, on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline, got homecoming tomorrow with Rutgers in town. You've got Hoosier Hysteria later on tonight. And I'm assuming he's going to be having a nice, quiet dinner later on this evening with rapper Gucci Mane, who's going to be at Hoosier Hysteria this evening. Voice of the Hoosiers, Don Fischer. You and Gucci Mane going to go, where are you going tonight? Like Yogi's, maybe down to, I don't know, the Irish Lion, Crazy Horse? Where are you going?
Gucci who?
Gucci Mane, an American rapper / record executive. He could get your singing career started, Don.
Well, if he would hire me as a singer with whatever organization he's with, he'd go broke in a heartbeat.
Let me tell you this. You have such a great voice. You cannot even try to get past me the fact that I think you could sound exactly like Mac Davis if you tried.
I might be able to keep. Well, let me put it this way to you. I could sing along with Mac Davis because he couldn't reach any higher notes than I could. So
I want to just really quick. We'll give you the forum, and you can go ahead and give us your interpretation / rendition of "Baby, Don't Get Hooked on Me." You ready to do that, Don? Go ahead. We're ready.
Let's not have anybody turn your station off today. I think you want the
well, I think some would probably rather hear that than maybe talk about tomorrow's football game. I'm not sure, so
I'm a little more verbal about something like the football game tomorrow than I am about Mac Davis and whatever song he was singing.
Baby, don't get hooked on me, because he was playing the field back in '72. Don, come on now, playing the field.
You are so much more intelligent than I am about music anymore. I got no clue who Gucci Mane is or anybody else in that genre.
That is a part of Hoosier Hysteria. Are you staying up here tonight? Or are you staying down in Bloomington this evening?
No, I'll be home. Okay. Well,
I know that Edgewood, I believe's got Jennings County right tonight in the start of the postseason in football.
Yep, at Jennings County. That's why we're not going down there. I'd go to Edgewood tonight in a heartbeat if I could, but it's at Jennings County, and I'm not going there because I got to get up early in the morning to go to Bloomington. So at any rate, I've already wished my son good luck on tonight's ball game. So we're hoping that they can somehow finally pull up and get a victory here. They did last week, of course. They beat Brown County, who really struggled.
Yeah, they're awful, Don.
If Edgewood beat them, they can't be very good. And I'm not putting that Edgewood down in any way, shape, or form because they're in a transition year. But nevertheless, it was good for Edgewood to finally get a win after the opening win of the season. That was incidentally no longer a win because I guess they played. My son played an eligible player in that game.
Oh no!
and he didn't know he was ineligible, but apparently they found out later, so they had to forfeit.
Oh no! I didn't know that. This is breaking news right here.
So at any rate, who
in the world's keeping track of stuff at Edgewood? What's going on there?
That's me, man. I can just tell you it's been a tough year. Nevertheless, they got a chance tonight at Jennings County, and we'll see how it all goes.
Well, I've always been a big fan of Edgewood, and obviously where I grew up in Easton Green, we played them every year in everything, and there was always that kind of competitive jealousy. Because one, Lance Ringler went there and he had such great hair, but the other thing was the fact that they were in Monroe County, so it was almost like they were a little brother or a little sister to Bloomington North and Bloomington South. It was a weird dynamic back then, but it always seemed like a good place to go. And I remember back in the days when Ron Heklinski was the head coach of basketball. I mean, you talk about dudes that played hard there. They had a complete shift in how they played basketball in high school because of how he coached and what he expected. And I always had a great deal of admiration for that.
Yeah. I mean, he was a good coach, and he was a hard-nosed coach, and he wanted it done the right way. And I think everybody that ever played with him probably liked him a lot in the sense of what they were taught. not necessarily liked him personally, because as you know, there are coaches out there who don't necessarily care if you like them or not.
Right. And he would be one, yes. So
yeah, exactly.
No, I had a great deal of admiration for how he coached and how he got his teams to play that hard back then. But all right, so no Jennings County tonight. Now, had you gone to North Vernon, you could have passed the first radio station where I ever worked. That was the then Win 106 WINN, Mount Vernon, Seymour, Columbus. It's in Scipio, Indiana, and now it's just got a bunch of weeds and stuff growing up in the building.
Well, that's kind of like where I used to broadcast from at WIRE in Indianapolis. So no,
yes,
over there, so.
Yes, kind of like that. One of my better days over there, I was working, and they wanted to know what was stinking so bad. And, I smelled good. I wore great cologne back then, but they found out that there was a dead possum in the roof. So it was up and
well, that's, I hired a guy named John Minko. I think you know who he is. John, of course, was at one of the very first hirings at WFAN in New York, one of the very first all sports station in the country. John was hired away for me to go there, but I hired John back in 1979 from a place called WART, the Wart. And I believe that was in Plainfield.
That's awesome. WART, the Wart. Man. You could get some hellaciously good sponsorships out of that, could you? I mean, the Wart.
Well, if the marketing people would have had any, if they'd have had marketing people at that time, it might have really helped them, but they didn't.
Here's your sports update brought to you by Compound W, Don, right there. That'd be awesome.
Dr. Scholl's skin tag.
We could do this forever. That's why I love talking to you every Friday. I am so entertained. Don, really, I'm to a point now where as long as we entertain one another, I really don't care what else happens. Seriously.
Well,
that's it.
I've pretty much been that way about my whole life. My family would tell you that I'm my greatest comedian.
Oh, it's the voice of the Hoosiers, Don Fischer, with us. So Hoosier Hysteria is happening tonight. Mention that. And then you got homecoming football coming up tomorrow. And you talk about a desperate need for any sort of just a couple of series consistency of good play. This football team is in need of that. I'm talking baby steps right here, Don.
Well, and that's what we should be talking, because after the last couple of ball games, giving up 104 points and scoring only, 14 yourself, it's been actually they got 17 against Maryland, but all those came so late that you didn't think about them. But the fact of the matter is, John, this team does need a confidence builder. There's no question about it. And tomorrow would be an ideal opportunity to get that. Now, granted, Rutgers is playing. I think Rutgers is the most improved football team from last year out of the Big Ten. I don't think anybody comes close to them and what they've been able to do. They're 5-2. Their defense is playing lights out. They're in the top 25. I think they're number 8 or maybe 5 in the country in total defense. They are playing terrific defensive football, and they've got a running game with Kyle Monangai, who's leading the Big Ten in rushing, with a quarterback that can run it as well. So they've got a ball club right now that under Greg Schiano knows exactly what they're trying to do. They built the product very well, and we'll see if Indiana can somehow come up with a victory tomorrow. Indiana's had a bye week. They obviously played Michigan after the bye week. Schiano's team, Rutgers, has not had a bye week yet, so this is their 8th straight week of playing. If Indiana gives themselves a chance in this ball game, I think they have an opportunity here. But they've got to play really well on the offensive side of the football, because what we've seen from the defense the last couple of weeks is a bit it's no question. Yeah. It's a little dangerous right now how they're playing. They're trying to do too much. And John, you saw it in the ball game last week against Michigan. You had a guy leave his man because he thought he had to help out on the play, and they threw a touchdown pass right over the top of him. And it was just – it's that kind of thing that's going on right now with this ball club. the inability to focus on your job and get your job done rather than try to help somebody else with theirs. And honestly, this team needs a confidence builder, and they need it badly.
Yeah, it's a Don Fischer, voice of the Hoosiers. That's IU and Rutgers tomorrow. That kick is at noon. That means 11 a.m. on 93 WIBC for the pregame show. I don't even know really where to begin last week. I mean, 52 unanswered to Michigan. No doubt Michigan is good, one of the best in the nation, but and then it comes out Michigan's, under investigation by the NCAA for illegally stealing signs or illegally scouting or something like that. See, I'm assuming they did not do that. Maybe the investigation does not hinge on what IU was doing, I guess, last week, does it? So, unfortunately.
Well, we could look at it differently. We could actually say, yeah, that had a lot to do with why Indiana got buried.
Well, we could.
But here's the thing. You had a brand-new offensive coordinator, and Michigan had no idea what he was going to do. So I don't think maybe that excuse will carry very far. I don't think so,
no. No, it probably won't. And it just it was just magnified again in all the wrong ways on both sides of the football, Don, last week in Ann Arbor.
Yeah. I think the biggest key right now, John, is they've got to settle on a quarterback. They've got to determine who it's going to be. And the oddity or irony of that scenario or that statement is the fact that very much is a very good possibility that we could see a third quarterback in the mix tomorrow. That being Dexter Williams. Because Dexter dressed for last week's ball game. He did not get in, but he was dressed for it up in Michigan, and he's worked this week, and there's no question Dexter, of course, has more experience than either of the two guys put together that are redshirt freshmen as quarterbacks. So I don't know what's going to happen in that regard. Tom Allen gave no indication as to what might take place in that regard this coming week, although he did say we've got to have just one guy we're counting out at quarterback at this point. So I think, maybe all the things that have been written this week and all the negative stuff that's come out maybe has the attention of the offensive side of the football. Well, we hope it takes place.
You may be at a point right now, Don, where really nothing is going to surprise you, but I am curious to know, would it surprise you in any sense if Dexter Williams is the guy tomorrow?
It would surprise me if he would be the starter. Yeah, I would be shocked by that because he's practiced, but he hasn't practiced a ton, and he hasn't been hit yet. And coming off an injury like that, we know what Michael Penix was like his last year at Indiana, coming off an injury, a serious injury like he had. I mean, I just don't know. I don't know how you can put a young man in that position if he hasn't practiced quite a bit, number one, and then number two, hasn't been slid in there, a little bit for a time being, not necessarily the starter, but gets a little bit of a role in what the team is trying to do in a game. So, honestly, I don't know what's going to happen with that. Again, they have kept mum on how they're planning on using him, if in fact they use him at all. So right now, all I can tell you at this juncture is that there is the possibility that he could be in there too, just like the other two.
Would it surprise you if you saw, non-injury speaking, all three at some point tomorrow?
I hope not.
Yeah, me too.
And I'm saying that just because I think they've got to settle. I think they really have to try to settle and determine who they want to be the guy. And I think it's a factor that has hurt this team right now, and it's probably hurt both these quarterbacks being flip-flop back and out of there. I can't answer that question. I haven't talked to either one of these guys since they've been doing this. I just can't see that it hasn't been a psychological factor for both of them.
I don't know. I just kind of sit here and think that ultimately they would love to see Dexter Williams out there. But then, when Tom mentioned earlier this week that, hey, we got to settle on one guy, and him not having, any experience so far this year and not putting him out there in live fire coming up tomorrow. Yeah, I guess you could go back against that and go ahead and play him at some point. But I would agree with you. I mean, you settle on somebody and go. It's already a cluster, but that makes it even more so of a cluster if you're all over the map continuously at that position.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably the most important position, at least from an offensive standpoint on the field. And And we know that from how the NFL goes about it, and we know how important it is at the college level too. And I understood why that they would have a trial scenario for these two redshirt freshmen. I get that. But once you've decided on who the guy's going to be, I think you got to stick with him, no matter who it is. So, unfortunately, they're in this turmoil right now because they haven't done that. And it doesn't mean that they would have won any ball games that they've lost. But at the same time, at least you know who your guy is. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, it's nothing. The only thing that can help right now, and that's why I mentioned earlier, Don, baby steps. I mean, I'm not talking about winning tomorrow, but be competitive. Be competitive in the first quarter. Maybe have some consistent football being played to the half. That's really what it is all about right now in terms of this football team. Even before you start talking about winning and losing, it's just the start of the game, getting through it, and not falling down that well that we oftentimes see on either side of the football with an IU team.
Yep, and it's right now, John. It's all about confidence, in my opinion. They've got to find some way to build that confidence level, whether it's just in quarterbacks or on the offensive side. They've got to get everybody in the same realm of believing once again. And to do that, you've got to win. And to win, you've got to play really well, no matter who you're up against. And in this situation, they're playing a Rutgers team that is playing lights out defensively, and they've got a good offense. They can hold on to the football and make shorten the game with their running game. It's going to be very difficult for Indiana to win this contest, and yet I still think they've got a chance to do that if they play up to their capability.
He is Don Fischer, voice of the Hoosiers, with us again. IU Rutgers coming up tomorrow. Noon is the start, 11 a.m., the pregame show on 93 WIBC. I was just reading, too, regarding the spying, whatever the case, with Michigan and Jim Harbaugh. Saw Pat Forty had a story that largely depends on this Michigan probe of the NCAA enforcement. If this becomes an infractions case, potentially penalties loom, and they're calling them level 1. I think you would have to have like a scout or somebody in your huddle, right? On a level 1, right? What the hell?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure what level 1 means.
Me either.
To that scenario, but I would say this: it does appear to be a serious allegation, and I don't know who made it. I guess I saw a couple of articles that Rutgers put out today on Greg Schiano being upset and saying something in their post-game press conference. But he said he was alluding to something else, some nuances with the officials rather than – and I could have said, well, Greg, I think Indiana's experienced that nuance with the officials a time or two, especially in Ann Arbor.
Yes, that nuance has been often. But no, I actually heard – what he said about that, and you could take it in terms of talking about Michigan and what they're in right now, investigation wise, but you could really take it a number of different directions. So, it's interesting. It's interesting to say the least. I'm telling you what, they're going to track one of these days. They're going to track down Jim Harbaugh, aren't they? I mean, they're trying. They're trying every way, it seems.
It appears so. It appears. I mean, the guy, of course, as all Colts fans know, was absolutely phenomenal here. I mean, his comeback efforts and games and that kind of thing, he was fun to watch, and he was certainly a hero to Colts fans. But since he became a coach, it's been a different story just about every place he's been.
Yeah, get a shelf life, does he know? And we know a lot of coaches that have a shelf life that can give you what you want for a minute, and then, man, when it's after that, it's pretty much done, and you can certainly easily point that out. Don Fischer joins us. How many practices with IU's basketball squad have you seen so far?
I've seen 4. I've seen 3. Well, I've seen one scrimmage, and I've heard about another one.
Okay,
but I'm not going to talk about it. No, I can't do it. I was there for 2 practices. I've been there for 3 practices that I've actually seen. 4 practices that I've actually seen, but I've only seen one scrimmage. And the one scrimmage I think we talked about last week was not a very good one.
Right. What do you expect from Xavier Johnson this year?
Well, I would think there's little question that he's going to be the leader of this ball club. Obviously, as the point guard, that's exactly what Mike Woodson always wants. He wants his point guard to be the leader. I think he's got the experience now. He's had to sit on the bench for basically 2/3 of a year to watch this team play. And if he didn't gain something from that, then he wasn't paying attention, because it should teach you a lot when you just sit there and watch your teammates and see what the coaches are trying to do with you and those kinds of things. And I think he tried to be a bit of a leader last year, but when you're out, you're not as verbal, or you can't be as verbal as you would like to be. That said, I expect a lot from him. I think he's got to be the guy that puts this team on his back at times. And without doubt, I think the one thing that they missed out of Xavier last year when he was hurt was his defensive prowess, because he would have been a major factor defensively during the Big Ten portion of the schedule against some of the best guards in this league. Jalen Pickett, of course, Boo Buie, guys like that Indiana didn't have an answer for during the regular season. So I think his defensive skills and what he's able to do as a point guard and a lead guy and your leader, so to speak, are the key things that he will supply this year.
You so hope for maturation here, too, because as that team leader, he can make it or he can break it here. You know what I mean? And that's that's what you're hoping for. That maturity, that sitting out most of last season, that growth is something that he can maintain and be a mature leader, which is exactly what they need.
Well, they do, and on top of that, and it'll be part of his job to make sure that he gets these guys playing on the same page, because you've got so many new faces. I mean, you've got veterans in this team. There's guys that have been around, obviously Trey Galloway and people such as that. Malik Renew's been there for a year and that kind of thing. But at the same time, you've got 6 new faces on this ball club, 5 of which are going to probably play. I don't know if Ja'Kai Newton is going to get much playing time simply because of his injury that he has not recovered from high school. And it doesn't. I would assume that they're probably looking at redshirting him, because I don't think he's scheduled to play until mid to late season. So they've really got 5 new faces that they've got to put in here and regroup with. And all these guys, some of them have been here, but some of them have not. And I think right now it's just a matter of the chemistry between these guys is really good. And I think that'll happen as the season progresses, because I know Right now, Mike is just trying to put all the pieces together. And at this juncture, I'm not sure he feels like he's got that done. In fact, I know he doesn't feel that way. But I think he believes this team has got the talent to be pretty good as the season progresses. But again, they've got to stay together.
So Don Fischer, voice of the Hoosiers on the Andy Moore Automotive Group hotline, who will not be attending Hoosier Hysteria and not be hanging out after the show with Gucci Mane tonight. Not a surprise by that.
No, I don't think the primary reason I would even go if I was going would be to see Gucci. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I understand. Hey, are you going to our table tonight?
We are.
Holy crap. That seems like a double cocktail type of situation right there. Actually, I got to go over to Ron Colley, I think, and grab Blake a little bit later on. So they're playing tonight.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, but man, we got to do that sometime. I want to get back there and see Joe and Ginger and get our cocktails going again sometime soon.
Sounds good, man.
Because I'm buying. It's me.
All right, bud.
All right, buddy. We'll talk at you. Have a good night.
Hey, thanks. See ya.
It's Don Fischer, a voice of the Hoosiers right there. Tomorrow, that's a noon kick against Rutgers in the homecoming game down in Bloomington. And, of course, 11 a.m., 93 WIBC. Friend Tony Donahue of Fans Place joins us as we close out the show here. You got tickets to give away for Sunday, right?
Yeah, we've got Colts tickets. If you're here, you can hop in the Fans Place app, get into the trivia contest just by entering your entry to win our Colts tickets, thanks to Zinc and Bud Light. We have a Colts contest coming up on Sunday. You can hop in for free to win Colts tickets as well. We've got prizes all weekend with baseball going on, college football tomorrow. Hockey's well underway. So NASCAR contests. Check it out. Win some TFPs. Those are the free tokens you can use. Turn it back in for cash back at different bars and restaurants locally in Indianapolis, and drink some Bud Lights while you're at it.
How's it going, Fans Place?
Going well, man. We're Fans Place is growing every day. We're just talking to different people and getting the word out there, and hopefully have some big news coming up in the next couple of weeks, trying to work with IndyCar a little bit to boost some stuff next year, and just keep having fun with you here on Fridays. I know next week we're at Back 9 with Bud Light and the fans, so Slippery Noodle, one of the best places, as you know, in the city. So
yeah.
If you're on your way to the game on Sunday morning, check in on the app at the Slippery Noodle, have a couple Bud Lights, upload your receipt, turn those tokens in that you win for cash back at some of these local bars here at Indy, including the Slippery Noodle.
Are you going to the Pacer final preseason game tonight?
Yeah, I got some tickets, so going to go over and check it out. May as well see what they look like. Exciting team. I saw, 3 or 4 guys in the top 100, so the NBA. So
including
your boy Miles
33. There's my guy Miles.
We shall
right
see.
there.
Expecting an all-star year from Tyrese Halliburton. Excited about the Pacers. I really am. I think they're going to be good. I think they're good enough to get into the playoffs, and we'll see what they can do.
Good to see you, man. Fans Place with Tony Donahue right there. Thanks for being a part of this on a Bud Light Blue Friday. We continue on the other side with Colts Happy Hour. That is up next. By the way, Alex Bregman goes yard on a solo shot in the top of the first inning. 1-0 as the Astros stake their claim to an early lead. That's game 5, best of 7 tied at 2 games apiece. ALCS. All the guests today, just an outstanding educational, informational day regarding Week 7 of the NFL and everything else you care about in sports. Tell you what we're going to do, though. Quick break, we'll come back. Colts Happy Hour's on the other side. Bud Light Blue Friday continues from the Slippery Noodle downtown. Love to see you here. 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. Don't go anywhere.